Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is the man himself, Mr. Eric J. Morin.
Good morning, sir. Come back after an eventful few days.
I feel like every time I do like an announcement like that, it's like The Price is Right or like some game show where it's like everyone should stand up. Whee! You
come out with like some kind of like a robe on or something, or
like the Tonight Show, like I'm Jimmy Fallon or something. I like it.
I don't ever watch the like late shows anymore, and so I don't really know. I used to back in the day. There was a point in my life where I watched all that stuff, but I don't watch it anymore.
It shows up on my feed from time to time, and if it's like a celebrity that I actually enjoy like listening to what they have to say, then I'll watch it. And it's always pretty entertaining, but it has gotten to a point where it's a little bit dumb, I would say. They get a little bit they run out of fresh information to talk about. So I get it to some degree.
Yeah,
but yes.
I think there was a time when that stuff really made a lot of sense and it was a lot funnier, but I don't know. Maybe it's played out. I don't know. I don't watch it.
It's like all the old school hosts that you used to like. It's all the new fresh faces.
I know. I didn't want to say it because it kind of ages me, but you know, it was back in the day.
From an avid Seinfeld fan, it's okay.
Is it okay? All right. I mean, we just had better people back in the day, and you know, I think the day Letterman left, I think that was it for me. I think I was done.
Yeah, that was it for the late night talk show hosts.
Yeah, it really was. That was the end. But anyhow, here we are, Dental Wealth Podcast. Let's jump in.
Dental Wealth Podcast. I know, yeah, we had a busy couple days. I mean, we just had our first event of the year, or our second event of the year, but our first one with, we usually do like an operations mastermind. We get all the COOs and operations directors in, and we talk about operations. But this time around was all the business owners. So we had a great business acumen program, a great private group came into town. And then on the back end of that, we had leadership. So this past week was kind of a little bit of a crazy time for us. It's always fun doing events, and it's always good to see the clients, you know, get the information. And then we have like new action items and accountability in place. It's a kind of a revamp of everything, which we're really excited for. And I know you're worn out by the end of the 2 days, but you're also super like adrenaline, like your adrenaline's going. You're always hyped up after those events. And I think, you know, on Saturday, I imagine it's just like, I can breathe, but you're still amped.
You know, sometimes it's the opposite. It's like once I get off stage for 2 days, I've been on stage for 2 days. I don't want to stop. Like that's like my favorite time is to be in front of people and communicating a message and impacting people. So then you get off and you're like, oh, you know, and then you go back to work again. And you're like, oh, this is so. I love the events. Our Leadership Academy was a huge success. You know, we do that once a quarter as well, and so, you know, doing all those things, working on dental leaders from all over the country, working on, you know, dental business leaders from all over the country and their business acumen, and just a phenomenal few days. So here we are back on the Dental Wealth Podcast. And actually one of the stories I shared was this story. I actually brought it on stage, which I thought was pretty good. So if this is you, I know you're coming to the our next foundation, but I wanted to share this story or something that had come through from our one of our guys inside the office. Said he got a call from a doctor who's just recently signed up with Tower, and this is what she said. He said, "Good morning. I just got off with a dentist, and that opened up her practice in 2021, and did roughly $300,000 of revenue in the first year. But last year she did over $2 million. She said it's all because of the Dental Wealth Podcast. She listened to it religiously, and it was a lifeline for her in a time of stress, especially starting a new business. He wanted to let us guys know, to keep pushing on with the Dental Wealth Podcast because it makes a difference, Matthew. It makes a difference, right?
I love it. I think we were talking about that particular individual, Ken and I, the other day, and it's just funny because he was like, "Yeah, you talked to her, a few years back," and I was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember that." She reached out to one of our clients and was talking about a software, and then one of our clients was like, "Well, you should reach out to Tower Leadership." And 2-3 years ago, I told her, I was like, all right, here's a great starting point. It doesn't, cost you anything to do anything. Just start listening to the podcast. Stop immersing yourself in new business concepts. And, it's always one of those that, works through the grapevines that you're so happy to hear. And we talk about marketing a lot in the podcast too. And, it's always funny when someone quits their marketing or thinks something isn't working. And it actually is. Like, people are out there listening to it, but they're ultimately implementing it too. So it's like a special case study almost, just to see, it's not tongue in cheek at the end of the podcast when we say, share this with people. We do this so that you guys can gain from it. I mean, we want to go into concepts that ultimately help you scale out your business. And just from listening to the podcast, implementing the stuff, I think, there's two types of people. There's someone that's going to listen to this just to get their feel good, just to get, motivated for the morning. And there's someone that's going to take it, sit down, write down all the notes and go implement it. And those are the ones that can just from a podcast go from startup to $2 million in 3 years, which is insane.
But isn't that the truth about implementation? Like, if we start thinking about implementation for a second, it's like we had a doctor, and you'll know who I'm talking about. Years ago, this was when they would come. They literally would have 1 call, 2 calls a year. They would come for an annual meeting. Remember this, Matthew? I know you know exactly who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. They would come for an annual meeting. Then they would have a call with me periodically. It might be twice a year, and they absolutely just annihilated the landscape of dental. They just blew up. They would just take everything I said and they would just go do it. And it was crazy. I mean, every time I had a conversation with them, I was like, you guys are implementing more. So many people had excuses and look, it is challenging to grow a business, but so many people had excuses, but they just put it in place. And so it really makes sense to say that if you take the stuff just on the Dental Wealth podcast, which we don't even get very deep in here, this is just understanding fundamentals of business and concepts of growing and scaling. But if you go back and listen to 200 episodes, or what are we at now? I don't know. It's like 180 or 160 or whatever we're at now. There's so much content. There's so much content that's out there, and it costs you nothing. And here's a lady who is going to be integrated with Tower. Imagine what she's going to do once she actually starts, now that she's already over 2 million. But literally listen to the concepts. We've had people during COVID, listen to this and exploded their business. We've had so many people that listen to this podcast and change their lives. We've had so many people, the stories that come back from the Dental Wealth podcast. It's fun. It's fun to see the results that people get by this information. So when you take an episode like this is an episode of, experience. These podcasts are experience. They're decades of experience. Just like if 2 doctors, for instance, were sitting there talking about heart disease and they were both cardiologists, you'd probably want to listen because they have a lot. They've seen a lot. They've had a lot of conversations with people. They understand the challenges. And then if they were on a podcast for 180 episodes, I would imagine that if you listen to 180 episodes with 2 cardiologists, your heart would be just freaking, right? Unbelievable. And it's the same thing with business. If you listen to this podcast and you lean in, and that challenges you, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you haven't had that kind of a growth, and I'm serious about this, go back and challenge yourself and ask, why have I not gotten that type of growth? What is holding me back? Because something is holding you back. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, it's mindset and probably acumen. It could be capital, but I doubt it's that. It's probably mindset and acumen. And if you had those 2 things, if you had the right mindset, people don't realize. So for instance, you talked earlier, I have an Eric only group I call Leaders Level. It's a kind of a private group. And somebody asked me yesterday, they said, how do I get into your group? And you would assume it's on revenue, but it's not true. In fact, there are other advisors at Tower that have rooms that have some doctors that are higher revenue than some of the people in my room. So then what would it be on then? It would, maybe they're likable. I would admit they're probably likable, but more than anything else, it's mindset. The people that sit in my room have the right mindset. They understand when I get deep on mindset, because they understand the key to unlocking all of this is mindset. And when you have the right mindset, you can explode. And I've been doing this for a long time. The people that are always struggling, they're always going to struggle unless they change their mindset. I don't care how much training you bring in. I don't care how much accounting you bring. I don't care how much acumen you bring in. It's the mental part that helps them get there. Because this person's a great example. She mentally took her practice from 300 grand to over 2 million. And she did it because she didn't have a bunch of excuses. She just went out and did it, right? And so if you haven't had that kind of a growth rate, which we'll argue is a high growth rate in dental, not in all industry, not in all business, but it certainly is in dental. If you haven't had that type of growth rate, then you have to go ask yourself why. What's been holding you back? And there's usually a few key moves. I was just talking to a doctor the other day. I said, look, you make these 3 moves. Not only will you be completely out of the dental chair within 12 months, you'll double your business. And it's like sometimes understanding those key moves are what it takes to unlock all this. And so having the acumen around the key moves and then having the mindset to actually go out and do that, because you're going to have difficult days. And when the difficult days come, do you know how to manage those difficult days?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we look at things to talk about, I mean, ultimately speaking, we know for a fact, and this is 100% success rate, if we do not change the philosophical makeup of someone, so what they believe, business fundamentals, like all of like the business philosophy side of running a business, they're never going to get anywhere. They're never going to implement it. It's never going to stick. It's never going to catch with the team. And sometimes, people want numbers. But if we can just focus in on fixing you and your mindset, part of the reason we love doing this podcast is because we want you to start like if you listen to this in the morning, we want you to go into work with a different mindset than everyone else. And that's what, this individual did.
But here's the challenge. I was sharing this with Carson yesterday. And I was listening to Simon Sinek, and I thought this was a really good point by Simon, which is that if you go to the gym, let's say we go to the gym, right? Matthew, you and I are on so we were just talking before the podcast that you're trying to slim down, I'm trying to bulk up. We're in fitness routines right now. And I have been eating more damn whitefish in the last month. I have been meal prepping everything, and it has been complete torture sometimes. And last night I had my first cheat meal. I was like, oh my gosh, I need some carbs and fats. But here's the challenge. So I'm probably 5 weeks into this training program that I'm on. And I've got some results. And so I can look in the mirror and I can see the results. It's not where I want, right? But I know, because I've done it long enough, that if I just stay the course, even when it's challenging, I will eventually get the results I want. I just have to continue to stay the course. And it's hard. And I'm eating 300 grams of protein a day. So it's hard to stay focused in that over a period of time. But here's the point that was being made is that what about personal development and mental growth? See, that's a hell of a lot harder. And the reason why it's a hell of a lot harder is the time that it takes to actually see the results is longer. And you don't get to look in the mirror and go, look at my pecs coming out, or, look at my biceps, or I'm lost 20 pounds, or you can't stand on a scale every day when it comes to mindset. You don't have the ability to just stand on the scale. You understand that, as a Jim Rohn would say, it's the compound effect over a period of time. But the problem is with mindset and attracting the right people and attracting the right, acumen and all these types of things, you got to put in a lot of work over a long period of time. While you're putting in that work, most likely you're going to lose friends. You're going to lose people that were spending a lot of time with you because you're going to change the way you were doing things. You're going to have doubters, naysayers. Your family might push back on you and say you don't spend as much time. There's a lot of challenging when you're changing the mental mindset. And you just can't see it in 2 weeks. You can't show up. Now, it will show up, and it shows up dramatically. In fact, in a year, it can change your life. In a decade, it will change your legacy and impact and future and everything. And so, but if you can't see the results of your hard mental work, if you don't see that result, then you'll oftentimes go back to the way you were doing things because it was your comfort zone. And that's the challenge with growth and development. Why do people not become the 1%? Why do people not become the best of the best? Because it's hard work over a period of time, focused on mindset with limited results at first to show you, and you can't look in the mirror. You just have to watch it show up in your life over a period of time, and it will show up. But you have to have faith. And here's the problem. Even working out, when we go to the gym and we work out on a daily basis, here's the cool part. Like, even though we don't have results yet, we have to have faith. We have faith, right? Right now, you're trying to slim down. Like, you wouldn't even do this if you didn't have faith that it was going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to bulk up. So I wouldn't be eating what I'm eating. You wouldn't be eating what you're doing. You wouldn't be working out the way you're doing. Like, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have faith it was going to work, right? If we didn't have faith that it was going to work, well, we would just stop and go get a cheeseburger and some fries. But we have faith over a period of time that we know it's going to work. And then we start to see the results. The challenge around that is that when it goes to mental mindset, when it goes to actually building yourself, when it becomes the best version of you, the problem is you have to have faith for a longer period of time without results that show up in the mirror. And that's why most people will never become the best of the best, because they're not resilient enough to push through and continue to do it and keep the faith over a period of time, that if they just have a compound effect, if they do the daily disciplines, if they listen to the podcast, if they implement this information, if they get consulting help, if they get the right accounting relationship, if they do these things over a period of time, if they go to the gym and then they have a great relationship with their spouse and then meditate or whatever is your thing, and you start doing all this stuff over a long period of time, your whole life will change, but you have to be resilient enough to push through a long period of time and keep the faith. That's like the whole thing, like, keep the faith. You got to keep the faith, right? You got to have faith, the faith. I'm just saying that's what Reese, you got to like dub, like.
I was literally about to start singing that.
So you got to have the faith, right? And that faith is over a period of time. Now, some of you listen to this podcast right now. It's like, what the hell is he talking about? Like, I don't even know what he's talking about right now. You're the one who needs to listen the most. The person who's actually listening to this podcast right now who understands that is thinking to themselves, hey, you're right, Eric, and I just got to drill in more. I got to keep focused in more. The person who doesn't understand it, you need to go back, rewind, and listen to it again, and then rewind it and listen to it again, and rewind it and listen to it again, because your development, in your own development of growth, you haven't gotten to the place where you understand from a paradigm standpoint how to shift your mental state. And so therefore you have the most lack of faith, which will be hardest for you, which is why most doctors grow at 2.5% and never end up becoming the $100 million organization.
Yeah, I mean, consistency. I think, everybody wants a one-trick pony, but that one trick, if done over and over and over and over again, sometimes it can be mundane. It can feel like it's the same thing over and over again. But as long as you have a mission of what you're trying to get accomplished, that's what, pushes me through the workouts. That's what pushes me to be successful. Is I know that if I do these little things every single day, it's going to pay off. I think the best part, we live in a world now where I would say 99% of everything we do has been done before. So there's active studies on everything. If you do this, then it leads to this. And this is typically the timeline to do it. Even with workouts, it takes about 8 to 12 weeks for you to start seeing some type of results. And then if you push through that, that's when the people get the most results, is between that 12 weeks to the 6-month time frame. That's when you start seeing significant results. It just takes time, especially even in business, or doing your leadership. Part of the reason why we do quarterly events is because we know it takes time. We know if you put these in place, you listen to the videos, you do the assignments that you have, you're going to get results. If you expect to get results right away, you're already setting yourself up for failure, and that's going to lead to you quitting. But the best part is, even especially what we do, we've seen it time and time again. We know that if you do X, Y, Z, and you do it consistently for a long period of time, you're going to have results. You're going to move past everyone else. You're going to have success. And that's with anything in life. I mean, if you start, waking up or you start going to bed at 8 o'clock and you get that 8 hours of sleep, your body's going to have to take time to react to it. And it's going to take about probably 2 to 3 weeks before you to actually feel refreshed when you get up in the morning. And some people will be like, oh, I didn't get, I've been sleeping for 8 hours and after a week I feel the same. So I'm just going to cut doing that because I didn't want to wait to see the results. Sometimes, you got to persevere through the tough times. You got to be consistent with that routine.
Well, in business, it's interesting. So I would say with business also, the challenges are pushing through challenges is what change your mindset. And the early days of Tower, Matthew, if we lost somebody, it'd be like, oh my gosh, we lost a key person, right? And then you go through it and you hire somebody else and you're like, oh, we were fine, and then you do that enough and then you go, oh, so then you don't sweat it anymore. You just make key decisions for the organization. It's no big deal. Doctors that are the most successful, you're like, yeah, we lost a doctor today. No big deal. We'll get another one. It's fine. We just need to, do what we need to do. And so this idea of pushing through these challenges is a mindset shift. It is a challenge. And knowing that, hey, these challenges are only there for me, right? They're there for me. And we're not going to hear someone who's $20 million talk to us about a front desk issue, right? We're not going to hear somebody who's $20 million talking about, retaining a team member. We're not going to talk about 20 million. Like there comes a point where we know that there's you push these challenges, like you have the challenges at 500 grand so that at 5 million, right? Or even $1 million. Those challenges you have at 500 grand are not the same challenge you have at $1 million. And the ones at $1 million are not the same at 3 million. And the 3 million are not the 5 million. The 5 million are not the 10 million. When you're $10 million, you look back at the challenges you had at $1 million and you laugh and you go, that was my challenge? That was not a challenge. But then you sit in a room with a guy who's talking about the challenges at $1 million. You go, oh my gosh, come on, dude, just make the decision. And so there is a mindset shift, there's a business shift, there is a growth. And if you know that, if you can know, then that means that your future self already has the answers. If your $20 million business self, I know this sounds a little fluffy here, but just stick with me. At $20 million, you would be making different decisions than you are today. That's just a fact. You would just make different decisions. You would do things different. You wouldn't act the same way as you're acting today. What you need to do is lean into the person who runs a $20 million business and ask yourself, what kind of decision would that person make? What would that person make in a decision like this? So for instance, I run a $20 million company, for instance, or a practice, and 2 hygienists quit. If I've got a $20 million business, a practice, and I lose 2 hygienists, how much sleep am I losing? Not much at all. I mean, I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. We'll replace them. No big deal. And so that person that knows how to solve that problem much quicker, that person, you ask yourself, like, what would that person do? And that's a shift in mindset to understand, like, you can wait until you go through all these changes and difficulties and challenges, and maybe you push through and maybe you won't push through. But I will say that if you do push through it, just ask yourself, like, what would that future person do? Or alternative, if you say, hey, Eric, that's too fluffy for me, that's fine. Go hang out with people with $20 million dental practices then. Go hang out in rooms with people with $20 million dental practices and then share that same story with them and watch their faces like look like you just dropped a fart, like, because they're so far past that such elementary issue that they won't even want to be in the room with you. Because when you drop that issue, just trust us, we run all kinds of different masterminds and growth programs, and I will tell you now, you put the wrong person in the wrong room. So for instance, you take a $1 million dental practice and you put them in a room with people doing $15 million, and everyone in that $15 million group is like, why is that guy in this group? Like, his challenges were so silly. Like, he's not helping the group. And so that's what happens. And almost like that's what but if you would just sit in that room and listen, all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, that's no big deal. So I'll give you one more example. I'm talking a lot today, but here we go. So there was a doctor who was going through a challenge and was like, I just don't know if I can get through it. And then Jordan was having a Zoom phone call with a bunch of doctors, and he invited her on the Zoom phone call, and then she shared her story, what her challenge was. And then in that Zoom phone call, Jordan said, hey, everyone raise your hand if you've had this kind of issue. And like, everyone raised their hand. And he's like, this issue is the issue that everyone has. So she felt better because she realized these are just normal issues with the business. In fact, recently we did the Wheel of Pain, right? The Wheel of Pain at the workshop, which we spun the wheel. We should get the Wheel of Pain out. The Wheel of Pain. Want to get the Wheel of Pain, Matthew? We should show the Wheel of Pain. All right. If you're hanging with me, you're gonna see the Wheel of Pain. Now you have to go on to YouTube to watch this video to see the Wheel of Pain. All right.
Well, you're just gonna hear it clicking.
That's right, because now you can see it. All right. So those of you who are now on my, should I turn it towards the, where should I turn it, Reese? That camera right there? Okay, so this is the wheel of pain. So let me tell you about the wheel of pain. So the first year of Tower, we got this thing to give away some prizes at an event or something. But it's been sitting in storage for forever. And I got it out because my point of using this was to say that all people's problems are basically the same. That in business, we have the same problems. And so I was in a room full of doctors and I spun this wheel. So if you're on YouTube, you can watch me right now. But here we go. Ready? I'm going to spin this wheel. And so the first thing we got is hygienist quit. So the hygienist quit is the first thing we got. And I said to the whole room, raise your hand if you ever had a hygienist quit or if that's an issue you're dealing with right now. And like the whole room raised their hands, right? And I was like, okay, we're like half the room, right? So then I spun it again. And I said, I have no idea what's going to land on. Let's see what it landed on right now. Now it says, let's see, struggling with phone conversion, right? There's another one, right? So it spins again, and now I'm struggling with phone conversion. I'm like, how many people are struggling with phone conversion? And like, 40% of the room raises their hand. And then I spin it again, and I say, all right, let's get another one. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Marketing not working. And so then the group kind of raised their hand again. And so my point of this whole wheel and showing this wheel is just the fact of like, these are the problems that you have as a business owner. Yeah. Like these are just the problems you have as a business owner. And I put these problems on this wheel and I wrote them and like everyone laughed in the room and they were like, this is freaking hilarious. And my point was to show the whole room, your problems are not unique. Your problems are not only your problems. You don't actually need a monthly phone call to solve them because they're the same damn problems. And if I spin this wheel, I can show you that the phone call you want to have with your quote unquote consultant once a month is just going to be something on this wheel. And the next phone call, it's going to be the next one. It's just going to be a pain point. But that's the pain point of growing a great business is that these are the things you navigate through and understand that they're just natural parts of running a business. And if you can understand that and you can work on your mindset and you can work on your growth and you can breathe, as you always say, Matthew, woosah, and just breathe through them and understand this is normal stuff, right? Cash flow dipping for a month, normal. Hygienist quit, normal. Can't find a doctor, normal. Marketing's not working, normal, right? And I could keep going through this whole wheel because I think I've got like 12 things on here. And so the point is that these are all normal parts of running a dental practice. Don't let that shit take you out. Don't let that stuff consume your day. You only have so much attention. I was talking to a group of doctors recently. I said, look, there's a difference between time and attention. There's a considerable difference between time and attention. Because I said, so for instance, let me give you an example. So let's just say that you have a problem and you've dedicated 2 hours a week towards that problem. So let's just say it's doctor retention. And you say to yourself, I'm going to put 2 hours a week into doctor retention. And I'm going to work with Tower and I'm going to work through doctor retention programs, whether it's RMUs or deferred comp or whatever. I'm going to work through this doctor retention program. So it took 2.5 hours. But is that how much attention it took? See, the attention that it took it might be 20 hours. It might be waking you up at 2 o'clock in the morning. It might be 6 a.m. when you're getting a cup of coffee. It might be, right? It could take up 30 hours of attention, even though you've only dedicated 2 hours to it. And we've all had that, right? We've had drama within our business, or we've had, right, some issue personally, or whatever it ends up being, where it's taking up all of your attention. So if you look at attention like a bucket and say, I only have 100 hours of attention, and then say, okay, well, how much attention can I give to this issue? And here's what great business owners do. They understand that they cannot hand their attention to problems that are already going to happen in their business anyhow. They don't get overwhelmed by them. They don't lose 30 hours that they could have been focused in growth. They don't lose 30 hours to that issue. They don't give it much attention at all. And so you give that little issue, the front girl quit, or the hygienist quit, or the doctor's not producing, whatever it ends up being, like you give that attention, you give that issue so much attention that you have no attention for anything else that you need to focus on. And that's the difference between the $15 million dental practice and the $1 million dental practice. The $1 million dental practice gets caught on issues that are taking all their attention, that are just normal parts of running a business. The $15 million dental practice blew by those a long time ago. Now, if you're a $50 million dental practice, well, hell, this still applies to you. Because at a $15 million dental practice, you're still getting caught up on issues that the $50 million dental practice blew by a long time ago. So if you understand mindset and you understand working on mindset and understand that these are just issues, and you go to work on yourself and the expansion of a new identity and assuming that new identity, you'll look at the same problems and you'll go, yeah, it's no big deal. It's fine. We lost a doctor. We have a doctor who's a client who I always love. He lost, I think it was 2 or 3 doctors. And when he got done, I was sitting in a room with him, and he had done a lot of like spiritual work, and he's kind of really into mind work. And he stood up in the room and he said, yeah, I lost 2 or 3 doctors, but I've done a lot of work on myself. And you know what? It's going to be okay. And he goes, I know it's going to be okay. It's always okay. And guess what? It was okay. And he's replaced all the doctors. So he could give that issue so much attention that it literally crippled him, that he needed to go get Xanax, and that he couldn't sleep, and that he was taking out on his marriage, and he wasn't going to the gym. Or he can just navigate the damn situation and realize that this is part of running a business. People that say, I'm going to sell my dental practice because I'm stressed. Well, good luck. Good luck not ever having stress again. Because even if you sell your dental practice and you walk with a few $1 million and you throw it into the stock market, what happens when 2008 hits and you lose 40% of your portfolio? Like, you're going to be stressed too. So stress is not something stress is actually to nature. Like, you're going to have stressful times. And in fact, all life is increasing and decreasing periods of stress. And if you look at your life, you'll see that, like, in your life, you had increasing periods of stress. Maybe it was before you got married. Maybe before you went to dental school. Maybe it was when you first started your business. Maybe it was when, a patient got upset, and then it went away, and then it increased, and then a hygienist got upset at you, and then they quit, and you were stressed out, and then it went away. And you had somebody else. All of life is increasing and decreasing periods of stress, and you need to understand that if you're going to be the best at this business or any business.
And I think consistency helps with that. Just like from the root of this conversation, we're talking about just putting in a routine, being consistent with it over time. If you're consistent with, your business philosophy and your mindset and how you approach the day and those type of things like losing 2 or 3 doctors becomes just something that happens in the business, and you already have plans in place. You have the right mindset to tackle that. I mean, I think that doctor said, just being a part of Tower Leadership for basically the last couple of years has helped him through that. He's just like, it happens. Like, it's nothing new. This happens in dentistry all the time. You lose doctors, and I have things in place because I've been consistent with my process to fill the void until we get new doctors in place. So I think, having that consistency in your business and your life will ultimately help you out in the long run. And I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up the podcast. I think we've been going for 30 plus minutes now. Is be consistent. Listen to this podcast, on your way to work on Tuesdays, make sure you're writing stuff down. How can you become better at being consistent with it? Instead of just listening, how can I take out a journal at the end of the car ride and write down what I want to get accomplished from the podcast, and then go share it with people? Be consistent in your messaging, be consistent with everything you do, and you will end up having a successful year. So anything else you want to throw on the end of that, Mr. Moore, before we close it down?
No, I think you gotta take this podcast and you gotta lean into it. Listen to it again. You missed some things. I promise you. Listen to it again. Listen to it again. Lean into it. And then go back and listen to another episode and lean into it. And, I had a guy that I've worked with, and he says he reads books by, he'll take a book, read the first chapter, and then he'll go and chat GPT and have it write a quiz on that chapter. And he make sure he really gets from the book, that he understands that chapter, and then he moves to the next chapter. And he's like, I read less books, but I get more from the book. Listen to the podcast again, and then share it with somebody else, because if you share it with somebody else, you'll end up talking about it. And then together, you're going to hear it again, and then talk through core concepts, and then go back and take another episode and take it apart. And because everything you're getting on this podcast is about information that you can go back and utilize. And why you might say, well, but Eric, it's a Dental Wealth podcast. Today I love to talk about internal rates of return. I'm telling you that I can teach you financial math all day long, but if you can't simply understand mindset and your needs get taken out by a simple problem in your business, you'll never get there. You'll never get, it won't matter anyhow because you don't have the mental fortitude to get you there. So work on your mental fortitude, work on yourself, work on your mindset, and listen to Dental Wealth Podcast. Like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for jumping in the studio. Make sure you guys hit the like, subscribe, share. Let us know if there's anything in particular you want us to talk about in any episode. We're happy to do that. So thank you guys, and we will see you next time.